Picture this. You've committed the ultimate crime. You've taken a life. Now, imagine that your punishment isn't a court of law or a prison cell, but something far more terrifying. A winged creature with snakes for hair, wielding a whip made of serpents, pursues you relentlessly. She drives you to madness with her very presence. This is Tisiphone, one of the most feared beings in all of Greek mythology. In ancient Greece, the concept of justice wasn't just about human laws and punishments. The Greeks believed that certain crimes were so heinous they demanded divine retribution. Murder, especially the killing of family members, was considered an offense against the natural order itself. This is where the Furies, known in Greek as the Erinyes, came into play. The Furies were three sisters born from the blood of Uranus when he was castrated by his son Cronus. From this violent birth came Alecto, Megaera, and Tisiphone. Each sister had her own specialty, but Tisiphone was the most feared. Her name means voice of revenge, and she was specifically tasked with punishing murderers. Tisiphone wasn't just any divine enforcer. She was a creature of nightmares made manifest. Ancient sources describe her as having bronze wings, eyes that dripped blood, and hair made of writhing serpents. Her most terrifying weapon was her whip, crafted from venomous snakes that would lash out at her victims. But her true power wasn't physical torture. It was psychological warfare. When Tisiphone marked someone for punishment, she didn't simply kill them. That would be too merciful. Instead, she would appear to her victims, sometimes visible to them, alone. She would whisper accusations in their ears, reminding them constantly of their crimes. Sleep became impossible as she haunted their dreams. Food turned to ash in their mouths. Every shadow might hide her terrifying form. The madness Tisiphone inflicted wasn't random chaos. It was a carefully crafted torment designed to make murderers experience the full weight of their actions. She forced them to relive their crimes over and over, to feel the terror their victims had experienced. Some victims of her pursuit would tear at their own flesh, believing they saw snakes crawling on their skin. Others would hear the voices of those they'd killed, calling out for justice. One of the most famous examples of Tisiphone's pursuit involves Orestes, the son of King Agamemnon. When Agamemnon returned from the Trojan War, he was murdered by his wife Clytemnestra and her lover Aegisthus. Orestes faced a terrible dilemma. The god Apollo commanded him to avenge his father's death, but killing his mother would bring the Furies' wrath upon him. Orestes chose to obey Apollo and killed both Clytemnestra and Aegisthus. The moment his mother's blood was spilled, Tisiphone appeared. She began her relentless pursuit, driving Orestes to the brink of insanity. He fled from city to city, but there was no escape from her presence. She appeared in his dreams, in reflections, in the corner of his vision. The snake whip left invisible wounds that burned like fire. The torment was so severe that Orestes could barely function. He would suddenly cry out in terror, swatting at snakes that others couldn't see. He spoke to people who weren't there, begging his dead mother for forgiveness. The madness was so complete that even his closest friends began to fear him. Tisiphone's pursuit of Orestes illustrates a crucial aspect of Greek justice. The Greeks believed that some crimes created a pollution, a spiritual contamination that had to be cleansed. Murder within a family was particularly heinous because it violated the sacred bonds of kinship. Tisiphone's role was to ensure that this pollution didn't go unpunished. But Tisiphone didn't only pursue individual murderers. She could also inflict her punishment on entire cities or families. If a community harbored a murderer or failed to seek justice for a killing, she might bring plague, famine, or civil war. Her snakes would slither through the streets, bringing madness to innocent and guilty alike. The city of Thebes experienced Tisiphone's wrath when King Laius was murdered by his son Oedipus. Even though Oedipus didn't know he was killing his father, the crime still demanded punishment. Tisiphone sent the Sphinx to terrorize the city, posing riddles that meant death for those who answered incorrectly. The plague and suffering continued until Oedipus discovered his true identity and faced the consequences of his actions. Tisiphone's methods weren't just about punishment. They served as a deterrent to others who might consider murder. Ancient Greeks told these stories as warnings. They showed that divine justice was inescapable and that the gods were always watching. No crime could be hidden from the Furies, no matter how cleverly concealed. The snake whip that Tisiphone wielded was particularly symbolic. Snakes in Greek culture represented both death and rebirth, poison and medicine. The whip's lashes didn't just cause pain. They injected a kind of spiritual venom that corrupted the soul. Each strike reminded the victim of their crime, while simultaneously offering the possibility of redemption through suffering. Interestingly, Tisiphone and her sisters weren't entirely merciless. In some stories, their pursuit could end if the murderer underwent proper purification rituals or faced trial by a legitimate court. The famous trial of Orestes in Athens, where he was eventually acquitted by the goddess Athena, showed that even the Furies could be reasoned with under the right circumstances. This aspect of Tisiphone's nature reflects the Greek understanding of justice as restorative rather than purely punitive. The goal wasn't just to make murderers suffer, but to restore the cosmic balance that their crimes had disrupted. Once that balance was restored, either through suffering or through proper legal procedures, even Tisiphone would withdraw her pursuit. The influence of Tisiphone and the Furies extends far beyond ancient Greece. They appear in countless works of literature, from Aeschylus's ancient trilogy, the Orestia, to modern novels and films. The concept of inescapable guilt and psychological torment that they represent resonates across cultures and centuries. In modern psychology, we might recognize elements of what the Greeks attributed to Tisiphone's influence. The overwhelming guilt and paranoia that can consume those who have committed terrible acts, the way trauma can manifest in hallucinations and delusions, the psychological prison that guilt can create. The ancients personified these experiences as divine punishment, but the underlying human experiences they described remain remarkably relevant. Tisiphone's story also speaks to humanity's deep need for justice. In a world where the guilty sometimes escape human punishment, the idea of divine retribution provides comfort. It suggests that ultimately, no crime goes unpunished, no victim goes unavenged. This belief has sustained countless cultures throughout history. The image of Tisiphone with her snake whip, pursuing murderers across the ancient world, represents more than just mythological storytelling. It embodies humanity's understanding of conscience, guilt, and the price of taking another's life. Her relentless pursuit reminds us that some actions carry consequences that extend far beyond the immediate moment. In the end, Tisiphone serves as both warning and promise. A warning to those who might consider murder that divine justice is inescapable, and a promise to victims and their families that their suffering will not be forgotten, that justice will ultimately prevail. Her snake whip cracks, not just in ancient myths, but in the conscience of anyone who has ever wrestled with guilt and the weight of their actions. The legacy of Tisiphone continues to influence how we think about justice, punishment, and redemption. Her story reminds us that true justice isn't just about external consequences, but about the internal reckoning that comes with our choices. In a world still grappling with questions of justice and accountability, the ancient Greek understanding of divine retribution offers both cautionary wisdom and enduring hope.